Hey YouTube, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. 1.0 stamped steel beadlock wheels for microcrawlers for the SCX24 or other microcrawlers. There was only RC4-wheel drive which offered such rims, and they were sold out and sometimes really hard to get regularly. But now, some time ago, Injora also released 1.0 stamped steel beadlock wheels, beadlock rims for microcrawlers. There have been already quite a couple of reviews out, but I didn't get the differences. It seems as the Injora beadlock rims would be the same as the RC4-wheel drives are, but they are not. There are quite a lot of differences, and in this video I will show you the differences, the pros and cons, and in the end I will also show how to mount them. But first, if Injora should watch this video, please Injora, we need your 1.4 by 3 millimeter scale hex screws, also in 5.5 or 6 millimeter length, because they are too short for the stamped steel rims. You can't use them, and that's super cool for the RC4-wheel drive. I do have those scale hex hardware, but RC4-wheel drive stamped steel 1.0s use 1.6 millimeter screws, and the Injora ones use 1.4 millimeter screws. So that's already a difference. And there are more differences. There are several differences between the Injora and the RC4-wheel drive stamped steel 1.0 beadlocks. First, the RC4-wheel drives are more expensive than the Injoras, and also the look is different. RC4-wheel drives do have 8 spokes, while the Injoras do have 9 spokes. You can buy only one type of the RC4-wheel drive rims in 3 different colors, while you can buy 2 different types, 2 different offsets of the Injora rims, and each of those in 6 different colors. The RC4-wheel drives do come with a wheel wrench, the Injoras not, but the Injoras do come with 2 longer screws, what helps mounting. Dimensions are different, weight is different, the screws are different. The RC4-wheel drives use 1.6 millimeter by 5 millimeter screws, the Injora 1.4 millimeter as the SCX24 by 5.5 millimeter. And that's why you can get hex bolts now, what I really love for the RC4-wheel drive rims, in 1.6 millimeter, but for the Injora there are no 1.4 millimeter scale hex bolts in 5 or 6 millimeter length available yet, as far as I know. They do have different offsets, the RC4-wheel drive and the Injoras. Paint quality maybe is different, the hex adapter quality is different, and maybe the Injoras are easier to mount. Some people reported this, but I didn't really see this. Here I have now one of those new all-terrain crawler Injora tires, all-terrain MT, mounted to a RC4-wheel drive 1.0 stamped steel and to both types of the Injora stamped steel beadlock rims. And first of all, RC4-wheel drive here, 8 spokes, 9 spokes in the Injora. Dimensions should also be different. Here you see disassembled rims. All of those are 4-part rims, so an inner ring and 2 parts of the rim and this hex adapter. The hex adapter is a little bit different. The RC4-wheel drive hex adapter does have a bore with 2.5 millimeter, and the Injora hex adapter does have a bore with 3 millimeter. So both work in the SCX24 with 2 millimeter axle shafts, and in all those Hobby Plus and Rock Hobby, FMS, ECRC 1 to 18th, 1 to 24th trucks with 2.5 millimeter axle shafts. However, sometimes the RC4-wheel drive bore needs a little bit of sanding in 2.5 millimeter shafts. but in both, that's the Injora hex adapter and that's the RC4-wheel drive hex adapter, the hex sits flush. So here in the RC4-wheel drive one, you see absolutely flush, and in the Injora absolutely flush. As already mentioned, the RC4-wheel drive use 1.6 millimeter screws by 5 millimeter, those ones. And the Injora come with 1.4 by 5.5, those smaller ones. But what do you see here? You see I hope you can see it on camera. You see a broken screw. And take care. I mounted the first Injora wheel without testing the threads before, and I highly recommend to test the threads before you mount them, because in several of those, in nearly each of the adapters, I found that some of the threads are not free. You need for a 1.3 millimeter hex for the Injora ones, that's already going really hard. In this, such a tiny electric screwdriver is very helpful, but you see again, and I tried to force it in the first wheel I mounted and broke the screw. Those screws are tiny. And I had good luck to be able to, there was 1 millimeter to here to get it out with those screw removing pliers of Engineer, but if not, this hole would have been lost. So I highly recommend to check this before you do it and mount. And if it's not possible to get the screw in smoothly, you should, I don't know what to do if you don't have such a thread making drill tool, because those tiny soft screws will break. So maybe the black axial screws are harder, but if it's not possible to get through, you see that I'm doing hard here, and you don't have such a thread making tool, I would check on which end it is, and even don't mount this screw or shorten the screw. You see, I free this thread now. Dangerous. So check all the thread holes before you mount them, and take care, because a broken screw can be super difficult to get out again. So now I cleaned up, I guess it's maybe because of the paint, I cleaned up this thread hole. You see it's even silver now, and now hopefully this will mount. Now it works. It's not the case in all holes, but in few. And such a electric screwdriver is super handy. The RC4-wheel drive 1.6 millimeter screws need 1.5 millimeter hex, and therefore you can also get such a tip for your normal, but take care, be careful, for your normal electric screwdriver. I didn't find 1.3 millimeter ones with it's a 1/4 inch shaft, I guess, hex. So for the tiny ones I only found those in the micro electric screwdrivers. Super helpful tool. So check those parts, check the thread holes. There are so many probably closed by paint, and that's the disadvantage of those 1.4 millimeter screws. They are super delicate and break easy. Those are the three colors. The RC4-wheel drive stamped steel beadlocks are available: silver, black and white. And the Injora ones you can buy in 6 different colors: white, black, 2 shades of gray, and gold, and the kind of red rose and gold. And you can buy the RC4-wheel drive rims in only one type. They call it 7 millimeter positive offset, what I don't really believe, or they use different ways of measuring offsets. And the Injora ones you can buy in 2 different offsets. You can buy them in this type, what's probably 0 offset, and in this type with 3.78 millimeter negative offset. What is negative and what is positive offset? A positive offset means that the center of the rim where the hub inserts is moved to the outer position, so to the street position of the tire, what means that the tires sit more inside of the truck, while a negative offset does mean the contrary. Center move to the right side to the truck, what means that the wheels, the tires are more outside, what we call deep dish. I will show this to you later. Mount the different offsets to this Chevy. And deep dish. You can deep dish both of those types. You can deep dish, what means people mount the hex adapter not to the inner side of the rim but to the outer, and turn the rims, and therefore they will have the wheels more out. And you can do this with the RC4-wheel drive beadlocks, even if it's not perfect. You see, this area here is not really meant for this hex adapter, while here it's meant for the hex adapter and it sits perfectly, but it works on both sides. And here in the Injora ones you can also do this. You see here I made a deep dish, so they call it. So I moved the hex adapter to the normally front side and mounted the screws from the inner side, and that way those rims and wheels do now have more negative offset and are farther out. You can see it here. It's nearly flush, and here the adapter sits inside, as here the golden ones with negative offset nearly flush, and here it sits inside. Dimensions. RC4-wheel drive website says that the 1.0 steel is to have an outer diameter of 28.6 millimeter and a width of 15.1 millimeter and a weight of 13.5 grams. And I don't know how they measure this. And the Injora should have only 27 by 14 millimeter and be a little bit heavier, 15 grams. But if you compare those, they seem to be, at least those parts, exactly the same dimensions. If the Injora are a little bit wider, even maybe half of a millimeter. So, and that's 27.5 millimeter, and the RC4-wheel drive ones 27.2 millimeter. I don't know where they do measure the 28 millimeter. Okay, maybe the inner ring 28.3 millimeter, but the inner ring of the Injora ones is also a little bit larger, 28.4, 28.5 millimeter. However, the RC four-wheel drive inner rings are a little bit wider. 13, come on, 13.6 millimeter, while the Injora ones do have only 12.3 millimeter. So the RC four-wheel drive wheels are really about 1 millimeter, a little bit more wider. And if they are lighter, I don't know, we can also check this. So let's check the weight. The RC four-wheel drive rims without screws are 12.2 grams. RC four-wheel drive says 13.5, maybe that's correct, with 6 screws. And the Injora ones are without screws 14.5 grams. So that's true, maybe 1 gram, 1.5 gram heavier. What's the weight of those tiny screws? Don't think 6 to have, okay, 1 gram or a half gram, 2 to have 0.13 to have. Okay, the 6 screws are probably about half of a gram. Now let's check the difference in offset. Here we have a Chevy, and on the right side I mount the white Injora wheel with probably 0 offset. The XL SCX24 axle shafts do have 2 millimeters, so you need M2 nuts, and those need a 4 millimeter hex. And on the left side I mount the negative offset wheel. Come on. And now we should be able to see that the left wheel, the golden one, with 3.78 millimeter negative offset, sits farther out, and that's the fact. Hard to see maybe on camera, but here I have nearly exactly 1 centimeter, and here I have 1.2, 1.3. It's a Lexan body and it's not totally straight. So more offset farther out, and the RC four-wheel drive once they have a positive offset of 7 millimeter, RC four-wheel drive states. But this would mean that the wheels sit way more inside than the Injora wheels, but that's not the fact. The RC four-wheel drive hex adapters, they are harder to press on the 7 millimeter hex on the axles than the Injora ones. And you see, they do have nearly exactly the same offset. Maybe the RC four-wheel drive one is a little bit farther inside. We have this 1 centimeter here, and here maybe 9 millimeter. We can also easily show this if we take the rims, and let's put the hex adapter, the hex inside. Here's the Injora rim, and here let's take RC four-wheel drive rim. We see on both the hex sits flush, and the distance from hex to the outer end of the rim is nearly equal, maybe a little bit larger in the RC4-wheel drive one. So here we have, probably hard to see on camera, about 4 millimeters inside, and here in the Injora we have only 3 millimeters inside. So this means the RC4-wheel drive stamped steel beadlock rims to have 1 millimeter more positive offset than the standard Injora ones. I don't know why they call this 7 millimeter positive, this probably 0, I don't know, and this 3.78 millimeter negative offset outside. However, if the wheel or this ring does have only one, that's the Injora, 1.5 millimeter or 1.4 millimeter, a negative offset would mean the center of the rim should be here nearly outside. 7.5 millimeter is half of this, and the plus of 7 millimeter would mean somewhere here, and that's not the fact. I don't know how RC4-wheel drive does measure its offsets, but I can say there is 1 millimeter difference between the standard Injora white ones and the RC4-wheel drive ones. There's sometimes a problem mounting the wheel nut, because in the RC4-wheel drive ones there is not a lot of room because of the screws. The 1.6 millimeter screws that come with the RC4-wheel drive steelies are of course larger in diameter of the cap than the 1.4 millimeter screws of the Injora ones, and that's why RC4-wheel drive gives you this wheel range which comes with each set of steelies, so you can easily mount them on the SCX24, which, as the 1/18 RC4-wheel drive trucks, uses a 4 millimeter hex. But you don't need this special tool. I have a ton of 4 millimeter wrenches, and of course all the good ones, they will work. They have a smooth and not very thick tip, the Viha ones, the Vera ones, but even the cheap Turnigy super old one will work here, and even those wrenches, if you press them in a little bit, will work. What will not work is those plastic wrenches. They are already, you see, you can't get in even with a 4 millimeter nut, and this cheapo from Donau looks good but is not. It's super wide and you can't get in. So that's not a big problem if you use the SCX24 with the 2 millimeter axle shaft and the 4 millimeter nuts. But you know that there are many more tiny trucks in 1/18, like all those FMS, Raw Copy, whatever. My fantastic, I love it, Atlas 6x6, the Raw Copy Katana, the licensed Toyotas, the FJ Cruisers, the Chevys, the Hiluxes, the 6x6, whatnot, the new FCX24 I do not yet have. It's not available here in Europe. And the Unimog, the Mogrig, and those all do have 2.5 millimeter axle shafts, and this means you will need 2.5 millimeter nuts, and those don't need a 4 millimeter driver but a 5 millimeter hex driver. And here the problem starts, and here you see you have an advantage if you use those scale hex bolts I love so much. You have a little bit more room here in the RC4-wheel drive ones than if you use the bolts that come with the tires. And here you see you have the problem, you won't get in between those screws with the 5mm range, even not with a very good and small one. So those will fit. They do. You have thread here, but you will have problems to mount those 5mm nuts because you don't get inside. So you can start it normally, or can't I even start it now? No, I even can't start it now. Maybe you would do it with your finger then and use small pliers like those ones. Or you have a cheap 5mm and sand it, really sand it super thin, and maybe this will work. If you use the scale hex bolts with the RC4-wheel drive ones, then this will at least start. But because those self-closing or what self-securing large nuts to have the outer end a little bit rounded, it will not really go inside as far as you want. So for the last part, it's nearly sitting. I take small pliers then. So it's possible with the scale hex nuts, but much more difficult with the stock RC4-wheel drive hex nuts. Does it? Come out? Yes. That's a small problem, but it is a problem. And now let's try the Injora ones with the smaller 1.4mm screws with the smaller heads. And you see my 5mm wrench works perfectly. So if you don't know which ones to buy and want those steelies for your Rockaby Katana or whatever Toyota, Chevy, Atlas truck, and you don't know if you should buy the RC4-wheel drive ones or the Injora ones, then I highly recommend to buy the Injora ones, because with the 1.4mm screws you will be able to mount the M2.5mm nut. However, if you are on scale, not yet available scale bolts, but probably Injora will make those available soon. What else? Paint quality. People state that the Injora ones to have better white paint than the RC4-wheel drive ones. In the RC4-wheel drive ones, if you screw the screws in and then remove them, paint gets off. Here that's not the fact, but I did already also see it on some screw holes. Maybe here you see a little bit white paint has come off, and in the Injora ones this should not be the fact. And in my opinion, that's not true. Check this out. There's also a little bit of paint come off. So don't know why some people found those. I don't have problems with my RC4-wheel drive ones. And if you screw those bolts in, also the Injora ones will lose little bit of paint in the area where the screw head sits. Maybe that's true. Painting is better here Maybe it's not true. RC4-wheel drive, Injora. Yeah, maybe Injoras look better. I don't really know. However, they are packed nicely. The Injoras come in such a tiny box. As you know, the RC4-wheel drive ones are also well packed. But that's nice and small. What else people did state and complain? They said the RC4-wheel drive ones are more difficult to mount than the Injora ones. And honestly, I cannot see this. Mounting the rims, the inner side is exactly the same. It's difficult. It's difficult in both. Sometimes it works easier, sometimes it works more difficult. In the RC4-wheel drive ones, I had sometimes the problems with some types of tires that it was really difficult to sit the tire inside the outer ring or the outer part of the rim, and most problems I had with those Mickey Thompson Baja Claw, so RC4-wheel drive tires. I remember sitting one evening trying to mount those, and in one tire or in one rim and tire combination it always slipped out. But I am no masochist. I won't try all tire types. I have probably 20 or more tire types now on the Injora rims, so that's work I will not do. I mounted the all-terrain MT Crawler Master tires to 3 Injora rims and to this RC4-wheel drive, and they were to mount equally, so as difficult. The only thing that's good, RC4-wheel drive does not give you any help, and Injora gives you 2 longer screws, 1.4 millimeter by 8, which helps mounting those, but that's the old trick. I will show you how to mount tires now to those rims. So here I have also new Injora tires, crawler tires, mud tires. That people say they are so good and so much stickier than the old ones. I have the old ones here. Don't know if they are really so much better. Actually, every week or 2 weeks there's a new video with some new tires and the best and the best and the best, and those are the new best and the next are the new best and those and those and those. I think those Crawler Master all-terrain, yeah, they are okay, but compare them to what other RC4-wheel drive are those? I think those are better. What are those? Goodyear Wrangler, I guess. So I don't know if that's only for sales. I don't care which of the rims you buy, the RC4-wheel drive ones or the Injora ones. I ordered mine from Injora Shop, so not from AliExpress, not from Amazon, not from eBay, and super fast and works super nice, but I'm no affiliate, so I will tell you what I think, and I don't want you to buy those. I want you to be able to make a decision what's the tires or the rims. If you want stamped steel, steelies, which are the best ones for you. I found recently even cheaper ones. Stamped steels look like Injora but not branded, some bucks cheaper on AliExpress. However, I have those and I like them. And now let's mount one of those mud terrain MTs to the Injora rims, and I can tell you it's the same difficulty in the RC4-wheel drive and in the Injora ones. In the RC4-wheel drive, if you have longer screws which help you, this helps. First of all, you have 6 holes here for the screws, but you have 9 spokes, and so those holes are not symmetrical. You have to search for the same spot on the rims, otherwise the spokes would not line up. So those ones here. But first what you should do, press the hex adapter in, and if this hex adapter sits firmly here, then it's okay. Press it in, and if it holds, then it's good and you can mount it that way. If it falls out easily, then it's more difficult. Then I will show you a different way later. So ring inside of the tires, that's okay. Those tires are not directional, so no need to check. And what I did do totally wrong now, of course, that's the inner part. So press the hex in here, and what you see here, to already check that you have the correct position of that the holes line up, and that's the difficult part. And they line up, and it seems to hold. So that's okay. Now we have to line up the front part, so it seems to be that way. That's okay. All holes lined up. And now those two longer screws Injora gives you come handy. Try to hit the first opening. Don't use a lot of power force here. You can easily damage the threads or the screws. And now let's hope that we also hit the second one. You can watch inside here, try to hit the hole, and it's the same pain in the RC4WD drive ones, not more difficult. Exactly the same thing. But I had good luck now. And now we screw both in, and we screw them in quite a bit. So you can always check here if you have the same distance. And now those sit only held by the two longer screws, and now we can use the shorter screws. Start them. And the last one. Only start. Now I remove all four short screws are started, and now I remove the longer ones. This started too, yes. Let's take two more of the 5.5 millimeter longs, the short ones. And now do it in star pattern or whatever, as you are used from your 1/10 beadlock rims. Always a little bit more, till there is some resistance. You can also check it here on the rear side, and you can estimate if the screws are all about the same. You see those two here, obviously not. Okay, now all seem to be about the same distance in, and I need about the same force to rotate them, to screw them in. And that was not super difficult, but also not super easy, and that's a perfectly mounted tire on a Injora Stamped Steel 1.0 beadlock rim. However, I told you that it's not always that easy. When it's not that easy, it's not that easy if this hex adapter part will not sit here, if it always falls out. And that's the fact quite often in the Injora ones, also as in the RC4WD drive ones. And also aligning those up is not always super easy. And what I do, I take even longer screws than those ones normally, than the 8mm long ones Injora gave us, and I drill or throw in 2 super long screws from the wrong direction. Come on, is this again a... You see it's again thread I have to clean. This one is okay. It's a pain with those threads, and it's a pain because it's so dangerous. If you break your screw, you're screwed up. So, and if I should finally mount those, I would test all threads now. But I only want to show you a further way how to mount those if you have problems with the hex adapter part not sitting here. That's the way I do it then. Press it from the inner side, so, and press the hex adapter in. It has to sit flush. Also take care, sometimes it doesn't sit flush. So here's the hex adapter now. Sits flush, held by those 2 super long screws. Now we take a tire. And put this into the ring, and now you can, first you have to align the thread holes up again to, what's the correct one here, seems to be that way, and now you have to play a little bit, they want to come out again. And try to get those in, and you see now I have lined those up, and even if the hex adapter wants to fall out, I can press it and use those 2 super long screws as lead. And now I can either use the 2 long Injora 8mm screws, or I can press them and simply use the short ones, the 1.4 by 5.5, and start them. And then you can press here and start the screws, 1 and 2, 3, 4, start them, and then remove the super long ones and start those 2. So that's the way that makes it easier if your hex adapter part will always fall out. That's my tip for the super difficult ones. And if they mount easier than the RC4WD drive ones, as already mentioned, in my opinion, not. same grade of difficulty. So that's it for this video. Hope you do now know what's the difference between the RC4-wheel drive stamped steel 1.0s and the Injora ones, and hope you can make your decision if you want those or not and what are the ones you want to get. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next video. I'll be back.